Now we turn to some action. Tonight, Democrats uniting around a very specific plan to combat this weekend's shootings. They're demanding Republicans cancel the Senate recess to vote on a gun control bill. After the shootings, there tend to be a lot of criticism of politicians. Sometimes there's even this sense they don't do anything about these issues. Well, what top Democrats are emphasizing tonight is not only a call for action, but that they were not waiting for another shooting to act in the first place. Speaker Pelosi made gun control one of the very first votes when Democrats took back over the House, passing enhanced background checks and a longer waiting period to ensure that those checks work. And this was in February, just weeks into the new Democratic majority. So tonight you have the Democrats basically calling for a vote and noting this isn't from scratch. It's basically just saying to Mitch McConnell, please finally hold a vote on those very bills we already passed in the House, which he has not brought to the floor.
And now it is time to call those senators out and say, what side are you on? Are you on the side of the NRA? Or are you on the side of those families that are burying their loved ones today? It is that raw of a choice.
The gun manufacturers working through the NRA managed to keep Congress from doing anything. That's corruption, and we need to fight it, and we need to fight it now. Lives are at stake.
Republicans need to, quite frankly, get their together and stop pandering to the NRA because people are getting killed.
Tough talk for a tough challenge. McConnell prizes his A-plus rating from the NRA, but there are clear signs the rise in shootings and a more aggressive stance on gun control might be changing the politics some places in America. Consider that state legislatures passed more gun control laws last year than in a year since after Sandy Hook, that NRA fundraising was down in 2016 and 2017, and that 93% of Americans now back these types of background checks for gun buyers. Now, that last figure is the most striking. If 9 out of 10 Americans support these checks, that logically includes a lot of Republicans and gun owners. So when we put that back up on the screen, you see a wide majority for both. 89% of Republicans, 87% of gun owners supporting background checks. We turn now to John Feinblatt, president of Everytown for Gun Safety. Thanks for joining us. How much of this in the politics is about the timing? Because we all understand that the time is the most intense immediately. Do you think these votes would be more likely to pass if they were held this week as opposed to, say, months from now?
Look, if the president is serious, he should get Mitch McConnell on the phone and tell him to bring the Senate back and have a vote today. No more tweets, no more politics. It's time for action.
What about? I'm just curious what you think of the question.
I think that we should be acting right now. That's what the American public wants. You just put up on the screen that 90% of Americans support common sense gun laws. They want action. We are experiencing a public health crisis in this country. We're at a point that parents have to do a risk analysis when their kids ask whether they can go to the mall or go to the movies. That's not normal. It's time to act. And when we hear from the president and we hear from others talk of movies, the internet, mental illness, those are just NRA talking points. You know, we live in a country with 25 times the gun murder rate of any developed country in the world. They listen to the same movies. They all use the internet. They all play the same video games. The difference is that we've got just too easy access to guns in this country, and it's got to stop. I think that August is going to be a really tough month for Republicans in the Senate because you are going to have parents and teachers and doctors and activists from Moms Demand Action at every town hall, at every district office, at every country fair.
That's part of the question I'm trying to engage you on is I'm just curious because you're in this fight and you're an activist in this fight. Is the better tack to get them back from recess and have this vote the week of the mass shootings and try to use the pressure that way? Or is it to flood the zone out there and put pressure on for weeks and then bring them back? And the reason why I ask that is to explain my thinking. I think a lot of viewers, we just showed the stats. 9 out of 10 people watching agree with you. So we know that.
Americans are ready for action.
Exactly. So given that, and we'll put it up on the screen, the logjam seems to be how do you convert 90% support on this issue in a way to move Mitch McConnell or whomever because in the past, Sandy Hook, et cetera, it hasn't quite landed on winning votes. I'm curious if there's a strategy or a breakthrough that you have in mind here, given that, again, in all fairness to you, most people agree with you.
Most people agree with us, but this is not a problem of the public. This is the problem of politics. And elected officials have to understand if they don't act and don't act quickly, they're going to be thrown out of office. 2020 is around the corner, and I think that the grassroots is going to make it very clear to them that they got a choice. It's a pretty stark choice. You can side with the NRA, you can side with the public and keep our children safe.
And you think this is a top voting issue for people in 2020 if there is no action?
Just look at the midterms. Look at suburban swing districts and how the issue of gun safety brought out voters and were part of why the House flipped Democratic. I think the lessons are very fresh, and we don't have to go back very many months to look at that. In states that some people thought were red and purple, in Georgia, in Colorado, gun safety candidates went into suburban districts and won and unseated Republican incumbents on the issue of gun safety.
Well, as we've been reporting tonight, there's a lot of facts on this side, and there's a lot of folks who want this to change. So, John Feinblatt, we know how much you've been working on. I really appreciate you letting us into a little bit of your strategy and what you've been working on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.